You're not my dad!
What up, Hope Biscuits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again. What are you doing? What are you doing?
You know how like you taunt bulls when they come through? I'm like a matador.
And who's the bull?
I don't know, but matadors are pretty and so am I. So I'm doing hot girl shit. Mind your business. Give it to me.
I'm just gonna do that.
I'm looking cool.
Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized. My husband is here.
Hi.
Looking gorgeous as ever.
I'm being pinned down under the oppression of my wife's hatred.
And he is supporting me in my dream to become a stand-up comedian.
Oh, are you doing more stand-up?
I'm not doing any stand-up.
Use the ranch bottle again.
That was
it was
a joke.
Funny. Flip it upside down. That was great. Hidden Valley.
So anyways, then I was like, this man can't do anything for himself.
You ever seen those videos
Yes.
on TikTok?
Yes.
I like them.
But just so you guys know, just as a reminder, in case you are unaware, I'm gorgeous. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, I will be both live streaming and posting videos of me playing Mass Effect Legendary Edition.
And like the explosion effect?
I'm not going to add the explosion effect, but you can keep doing that. Yeah. Yeah. So, I will be doing that. I'm very excited. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. But also, we've been addicted to Outriders. So I don't know how this is gonna, like, I might just disappear for a while, y'all. I don't know. It is unclear. Anyways, I picked this video just for you.
Okay.
Did I tell you guys to stay safe and sanitized? I feel like I did, but if I didn't, I hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized. Okay, I picked this video for you.
Okay.
It is
Black women bathing. Let's do it.
It is Overly Sarcastic Productions.
It's a history video. History of black women in bikinis.
History summarized.
Say it.
Samurai.
Okay. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm
My
happy
love.
Yes, I love.
You like samurai.
I do like samurai, but man, do I like some? Just.
Please stop.
Yes,
I know YouTube like changed the requirements for the level of inappropriate you could be for monetization, but
Which
this
is high now.
This is still not it.
Because insinuating is nowhere on that list, and man, can I do that? Yeah, I really do. I really do enjoy samurai. I really do, and it's so great because that Netflix special came out, you know, and it's like finally the everything you need to know about Japan and the samurai clans in a nutshell video.
They actually involved like Japanese scholars, which I really like.
Yep.
You know?
And all of their writing is a lot more in depth too. If you want to do any more research, like they get really, really deep into it.
Yeah.
And it's nice to bring that stuff.
That's what she said.
Yeah. With you know their writing lacks a lot of color, and so it's really hard to use like original text to understand the complexities of what's going on.
Right, because they're just writing down the basic facts.
Exactly. So this is really nice.
All right. Are you ready?
I'm excited. Boom.
Long.
That's great.
If you couldn't guess from the title of the video, or the thumbnail, or the protracted Samurai Jack reference, this video is about samurai, and I am hyped to talk about them. What I'm not hyped about is how I'm going to spend this video breaking down the image of the samurai you have in your head, which has probably been pretty heavily romanticized. So, sorry in advance. I'll start simple, and try to explain why Samurai Jack, a noble, honorable paragon seeking to return to the past and vanquish the great evil, isn't even slightly a samurai. First up, samurai had armor. Originally it was made of leather and later out of iron, but all Jack ever wears is his gi, and sometimes less. Second, samurai didn't really go out questing, whether to defeat evil or for whatever other reason. That's mostly a westernization, and it's partly derived from the samurai being analogized with knights, which is itself really problematic.
Okay.
Third, Jack has no master, and a samurai only ever existed because a feudal lord, a daimyo, had hired him. Jack is actually closer to a ronin, someone with the skills and equipment of a samurai, but without a master. Ronin were essentially viewed as highly skilled bandits, and Jack isn't a bandit, so we're 0 for 2 on that. Fourth, while Jack is very righteous and upstanding, most actual samurai were expected to be loyal to their masters
Right.
before anything else.
Exactly.
In real life, samurai were all kinds of deceptive and roguish. So our romanticized portrait of a chiseled cartoon samurai is wide of the mark. But then what about the Bushido Code? Wasn't the entire point of that to guide the way a samurai is supposed to behave and make sure they're being all respectful, honest, and heroic and stuff?
Say no.
No. See, the Bushido Code went through tons of variation over the centuries, due to differences in location, time, social status, and more. Above all, the most important thing to a daimyo was a samurai's loyalty. He could be the scummiest skis-ball imaginable, but if he was still loyal and good with the blade, he was a useful samurai.
But it's actually interesting because if you think back on a lot of the shows that you see where you have like a westernized protagonist that is a samurai group and then opposing samurai group, and they're like fucking shit up in a bathhouse.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, they're both samurai. One group you just agree with the leader's, ideals
where
or
you're
whatever.
at, yeah.
And the other one you just don't. You know what I mean? They're like, they're dicks. Like, yeah, but they stop us from being killed and murdered by bandits, so it's kind of cool.
In the early 1700s, our sources paint Bushido as a sort of acceptance of and practice for death. But then during the turn of the 20th century, it was seen as a guide for how to be a respectable person.
Right.
And then that got co-opted into how to be a good citizen. We can
Got it,
pinpoint
got
those
it.
two in part because of our literary sources, but that still leaves several centuries not properly accounted for. So our image of Bushido has changed wildly over the years. And then, in the West, people tried to compare knights and samurai and make Bushido analogous to chivalry, which is itself mythologized. So it's impossible to know what it was really about. But a samurai's loyalty was definitely the most significant defining trait that we've repeatedly observed history.
This is like really cool splash art.
Yeah, it's from the game that came out
What
with
game?
Ubisoft. Yeah, I'll show you videos of it. So you can play as knights and samurai and Vikings. They make them all fight.
What?
Yeah, it's super fun.
That sounds so cool.
Yeah, no, it's really cool.
Also, I want this for a background on my computer. Get on it.
Yeah, dude, there's one on Wallpaper Engine that moves.
Yeah.
It's super dope.
My husband does everything to do with my computer. Everything to do with my computer.
Thanks.
This guy right here.
Historically. Sorry to crush your dreams, but that's how it is. Samurai were essentially high-class, long-term mercenaries who had a code they lived by but still did a ton of dishonorable stuff.
And
but
they
since
will
they
leave.
were an entire class of people, at one point making up 1/10 of Japan's population, there would have been a lot of internal variety to a samurai's wealth, armaments, and especially behavior. The higher-ups had more going for them, and for those who had families and ancestors to consider, their actions had more consequences, so they'd at least be a little better behaved. Between the 8th and 19th centuries, samurai have been many different things, so trying to nail down a picture of what they were definitively like is near impossible, so you're gonna have to forgive me on this one.
Alright.
The modern Western idea of the samurai as a highly disciplined and honorable warrior almost definitely existed, but only at certain points in samurai history and in particular places, so it's unlikely that that would have been the pervasive norm. Since they were under the direct employ of a daimyo, they had relative autonomy and decent immunity to do whatever they wanted, and a lot of samurai took advantage of that. And masterless samurai, the Ronin, were equally liable to be total
Gang
jerkwads,
shit.
which is evidently the case in the movie set in Samurai. So since there's so much variance across time, let's jump back and do a run-through of Japanese history to clarify what we're actually talking
Let's do
about.
it!
Japan has been inhabited for many thousands of years, and agriculture developed in the first millennium BC. Then, as the centuries passed, people coalesced around sources of food, and kingdoms started popping up. By about 250 AD, Japan was mostly unified and ruled by a line of emperors. In the 500s, Buddhism got introduced, which is always fun. And then in the 8th through 12th centuries, the nobles got so obsessed with themselves and art that they stopped caring about running the government entirely, preferring to just let local government figure itself out. In this period, the Heian period, to be cultured was to emulate Tang-era Chinese culture, because China had been the big man in charge for hundreds and thousands of years. Now, if we're being super technical, the samurai really started showing up in the early 700s as a result of the Taiho and Yoro reforms. But really, these samurai were more like glorified secretaries. They are mostly to help the higher-ups in the nobility and the bureaucracy. These guys didn't have a warrior bone in their whole bodies. In the following centuries, however, the traditional aristocracy and imperial power declined because, remember, they stopped caring. Meanwhile, an alternative, much more militarized aristocracy developed in the outer provinces. In this alternative aristocracy, the samurai, servants, were also expected to be bushi, warriors, which happens to be why the Bushido code has its name.
Right.
Bushi, to be clear, is very different from Bishi, because I know if you've watched any anime ever, you're probably confused on account of there being a very hefty overlap. Anyway,
Okay.
as imperial power kind of fell off the wagon in the 12th century, a few of these militarized provincial clans started competing for influence, and
yeah.
after a brief
Scrap,
war, the
scrap.
winners established a military government in Kamakura in 1192. This government was ruled by a shogun, because the emperor is still technically an emperor, but he doesn't really do anything anymore.
I'm
The
dead.
shogun was the one with, you know, an army. While the shogun was having fun shoguning, the Mongols tried to invade Japan
nerds.
twice, and were conveniently scattered by storms. Also twice. After this, the shogunate was a little slim on resources and had a surprise uprising on its hands.
Oh, no.
So it sent along Ashikaga Takauji to go step on it, but then he pulled a 180 and stepped on the shogunate instead, establishing his own Ashikaga shogunate in 1336.
Okay.
Good for him. So this shogunate was all nice and well and good when a
Smart.
pesky question about imperial succession kicked off the Civil War, which in turn blew up into a
course,
century and a half long warring states period. Oops. But this is a full-blown samurai war, so get hype, kiddos. No tract of land was untouched by the objective badassery that is huge samurai armies fighting each other. If I had time and knew how to draw, I'd go into all kinds of detail about the incredible and amazing and interesting stories from this time. But since I, don't have either of those, I will
Is that extra
instead direct you
credits?
to an
Yeah.
excellent 6-part series on the Warring States period from the YouTube channel Extra Credits.
Right.
So should we?
Yes.
So should we,
Absolutely.
Should we watch the extra credits?
Yeah, we should absolutely do
We should
that.
definitely watch the extra credits.
And for all the people that shit on extra credits from an OSP video or vice versa, whatever,
Yeah.
they support each other, so should you.
It's super, and it's super weird. It was like super weird to read those in the comments. I was like, I love them both.
Yeah.
¿Por qué no los dos? Like,
Yeah. There's no reason why you can't do both.
that's what she said.
Do it. What?
Who tells it much better than I can. If you want to see samurai in their heyday doing the coolest samurai stuff ever,
Yeah.
this guy's your guy. What's special about the Warring States period is that the samurai were acting as full-on armies, with numbers in the tens of thousands rather than as individuals or
Jesus
small groups.
Christ.
So the stories from this period are pretty extreme.
Insane.
After about a century and a half of fighting, the Warring States period ended when Tokugawa Ieyasu and his army won a decisive final
Ieyasu.
battle, effectively taking control of all of Japan by defeating the last remaining opposition.
How do you even have
Tokugawa
people
instituted a new shogunate and moved the capital to Edo, which is why the period from 1603 to 1868 is often called the Edo period. Tokugawa's shogunate was rather peaceful, since no one really wanted another 150-year-long samurai war,
Right.
as awesome as that may sound to us. The era also saw cultural growth, economic development, and stable bureaucracy. In this period, the samurai still existed, but they did stuff like collect taxes, write poetry, and practice kendo in lieu of actually fighting wars. So the samurai have actually sort of gone back to their Heian-era roots of bureaucratic servitude, as being a warrior became vastly less important after the century of
didn't
war
need it.
gave way to 3 centuries of peace. This was all nice and fine for the more well-to-do samurai, but if a local daimyo needed to make budget cuts and laid off a handful of samurai, it meant an increasing amount of rascally ronin running around causing
Exactly.
problems for everybody. Even a lot of the samurai were causing problems just on account of being bored. This is really similar to what happened with Caribbean piracy.
That makes
when
sense,
a large
yeah.
army suddenly becomes unemployed, it just becomes a self-serving army instead.
Yeah.
Although the shogunate
Talk
had
shit
been
about my bitch
re-established
right
by
there.
Tokugawa, Japan was still governed locally by around 300 daimyo of varying political and social statuses.
Jesus.
The Edo period ultimately came to an end when the lower-level daimyo waged a successful civil war against the shogun in 1868, and overthrew him in one of the last big huzzas of the samurai. What followed was the 4-decade-long Meiji Restoration, where Japan, which had been newly reopened to the world after centuries of isolation under Tokugawa, became much more westernized, which meant a westernized army, which meant the samurai needed to shuffle out. And that was it. The samurai began as glorified secretaries, became the coolest mercenaries ever, fought in huge armies, and then worked as high-class bureaucrats. It's a massive span of roles and responsibilities over the course of nearly 1,000 years. And now that I've talked general misconceptions in history, let's talk some weaponry. Yes, the
yes.
samurai had the katana, but that was only one of 2 swords a samurai typically carried. They often also had a short sword as well, either a wakizashi or a tanto. But still, there were a bunch of different sword types used across the centuries. It just happens to be the katana that everybody got obsessed with. And honestly, I mean, yeah, why not?
they're
It's
fucking
gorgeous.
cool.
But it's important to
Don't we have a katana?
No,
I think we do.
we don't.
I think you accidentally ordered a katana.
It's a backwards sword from It's like an anime prop, basically.
Oh.
Yeah.
So we should get a katana.
We do not have one. We don't have one. And I found a super cool website to order stuff from, so...
I think we should get a katana.
Yeah, we might.
Yeah.
We definitely might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To know that they used
down.
way more than just the katana. For one, samurai were master archers, and then they also used all manner of weapons
Archery's
on
so
horseback
fucking hard.
too. And they
Yeah.
definitely weren't cheap, but samurai were often wealthy enough to afford the combat advantage. Horses are expensive, yo. And on the flip side, if you're a samurai on the ground fighting a samurai on a horse, a spear would be really handy for taking down that horse. So samurai also carried spears, like the naginata.
What?
And finally, after the Portuguese showed up in 1453, samurai regularly used long guns too.
Yeah, they
did
Essentially,
use
you
guns.
need to
Guns too,
recognize that
yeah.
these guys were highly versatile. And since we're on the subject of the katana, I'm going to summarize an excellent 5-part series by a channel named Chavezz on the truth about the katana.
He leaves
Because,
just like
as
we
I'm
do
sure
in
you
the
can
scene.
imagine,
I know,
this
I
weapon
should-
has been mythologized like crazy, and he does a really good job of systematically debunking all of these myths. First off, katanas are not the best swords in the world. They're great at what they're meant to do, just not the best. The metal that they used could have notable variance in quality, but it was generally comparable to any other metal anywhere else.
Okay.
Whether you think katanas are God's gift to mankind or the most overrated thing ever, there are examples of swords out there that support your view, seeing that the quality of each katana varied, like any type of sword.
Naturally.
Second, yes, katanas are made of folded steel, but the folding itself doesn't make the blade physically stronger, like if you were to fold paper. What it actually does is help get rid of chemical impurities left over
Yeah.
from smelting, since the Tatara furnace can't fully liquefy the
Exactly.
iron.
It wasn't
This
hot
causes an ununiform distribution of carbon and slag, which necessitates the folding of the steel in order to
know that
homogenize the
from
carbon
Forged in
distribution
Fire.
and remove some of those impurities.
do.
Third, the phrase differential hardening also gets thrown around a lot, but that really just means that the blade is less springy than European swords and has a
Exactly.
harder edge. Having a
is
soft
talking
back
about
spine
swords
doesn't
this
strengthen the
in-depth?
cutting edge, since the blade
Let me tell you.
Who is talking about katanas this in depth?
People have they have like perverted the ideas of what it actually was with what they've been told it was,
Right.
into the pinnacle and godship of samurai were the best warriors to ever exist in the world, period. From training to lifestyle to weaponry, they
Yeah.
were gods, forgetting that there were literal millions of them, and just like people, they varied. It's kind of like, debunking the, what happens behind a YouTube video? A lot of fucking editing. You know what I'm saying? So it's the same idea. It's in
blade
2017,
will chip
so it's
as much
time
as normal.
appropriate.
The main
Yeah.
benefit is that a katana will usually only chip at that hardened edge rather than fully snap in half.
Right.
Finally, a katana's design, being a wide single-edged sword, emphasizes stiffness and therefore cutting. Also, its weight distribution is rather high on the blade, improving leverage and therefore cutting. But the curve, however, is so small that it doesn't actually improve cutting at all, but instead actively makes thrusting more difficult because it offsets the tip from the
Yeah,
point of
that makes
thrust.
sense.
That was a brief rundown, but if you want to hear it from the source, I highly recommend
great.
that you watch his series for a much clearer and more detailed explanation. While you're over there, please also consider subscribing too, because his other videos are really interesting and informative. Links to his katana series are in the description, so check them out. So that's the samurai for you. Misconceptions,
love it.
history, weapons, and all.
Real quick,
Yes.
one thing I really like about the video is
Okay.
it shows kind of like the swell where the necessity for combat power does determine status in society,
Naturally.
which
yeah.
is paralleled everywhere that militaries exist, which is everywhere because violence is a type of political force.
Yeah.
But in the Japan eras that spanned, it really showed you what military might versus like legitimacy was.
Yeah.
And they really were just like, bro, you cannot make me do it, so I do not have to do it. And it was everywhere. Like everybody in Japan was like handshaking. Yes, they cannot make me do it, so I won't. Make me, bitch. Come in here, pay taxes. I didn't pay taxes. What now? Nothing? Sounds good. Sounds like I'm done paying taxes
Right.
forever.
Yeah.
And the guy's been like, I need your military force, Shogun. He's like, cool. And the Shogun goes, so if he's too weak to take care of this stuff and I have to do it, it's mine now.
Yeah. This is mine.
This is mine. So then they take it. And then eventually it just blew up into this gigantic war where people were like, why do we not just keep taking everything?
Yeah.
And then they figured it out. Oh, a stable government is good for having
Yeah.
families and lifestyle and culture and like sitting around playing music and writing poetry is fun.
Yeah.
Who would have known from the years of murdering? So that was super cool.
I hope you guys enjoyed the video.
I did.
Don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations down in the comments below. And other than that, peace out, Hope Biscuits. It's Skittin' Lit.